Welcome to another episode of the Sacred Roots podcast. So, today we are going to talk about something that I am pretty sure you never really heard about before. We're going to talk about Swan Mysteries, Swan frequency, and the connection between swans and the divine feminine. And not so many people actually talk about that, but it actually holds a lot of guidance, a lot of truth for your purpose if you have that swan frequency inside of you. So we're going to shed a light on that and unveil that beautiful mystery. And as you'll see, there's a very strong connection with hypersensitives and empaths. And maybe you are a hypersensitive and an empath as well. And it is not always easy to navigate a world that is so intense, filled with so much information, and where people navigate so many emotions. To be a hypersensitive person and an empath, it's very important to learn to protect yourself from energies that wouldn't support you, and to honor that sensitivity because it is your superpower. And you're going to see how swan magic can support you actually with that superpower. And it's going to give you a lot of, a lot of wisdom for your life. So the swan is a symbol of the divine feminine, like snakes are. We very often talk about snakes when we talk about the divine feminine. For example, if you look at a lot of Egyptian goddesses, they have a snake on the top of their heads. And that's because they have mastered their Kundalini energy and know how to bring it all the way up. And so then you have that snake on the top of their head. Or you see a lot of representations of goddesses. You even have a lot of pictures of Bridget, also known. You have a lot of pictures of Breed, who's also known as Bridget. And she has a snake, like a kind of spiral that is drawn on her womb and the head of that spiral is a snake. So it's been known for ages, for centuries. And if you follow my podcast, you're probably into everything around the divine feminine. So you probably know that snakes are symbols of the divine feminine, because snakes, they go through that whole death and rebirth process of shedding layers and going deeper and have a very fiery energy. And women know everything about those cycles of death and rebirth. We give life. We can also, in some ways, take life away from the people we love. But I'm not going to dive into that subject today. But so basically, every time you think about a snake or you see a snake, think about the divine feminine. And so while snake and their cousins, the dragons, really represent the underworld of the feminine, the very earthly plane, potentially the dark feminine, the swan, like the dove, represents the celestial womb of the divine feminine, the upper world. And in Christian paintings, we see a lot of doves. And we know that they represent this essence of purity and, higher consciousness. Well, the swan is actually that same frequency as the dove. Why are swans why do swans represent the divine feminine? Why swans and not other birds? You might be wondering that. Well, because swans represent the light. Swans migrate, and when it's becoming too chilly, they leave Europe and North America, and they come back around spring. And so they represent the light because they come back with the light. They come back around the equinox when suddenly the days become longer than the nights. The light is coming back, the sun is coming back, the heat is coming back. And so they represent that. It's also interesting to see that there are white swans and black swans. Just like there is a white moon, the full moon, and a black moon. the new moon. And as you know, the moon and the divine feminine are very connected, because a woman that is in her feminine energy, she honors the moon. She honors her cycles that are influenced by the moon. And when we talk about the feminine, there's also a divine side and a dark side. I'm sure you've already heard about the dark feminine. There's the essence of Kali in there, the destruction of the feminine. We destroy and we create chaos in order to bring new order, in order to birth the new. There's again this essence of the cycle. And in Celtic and Druid traditions, those birds are really seen as sacred birds. There are a lot of sacred sites in England and in France where they have actually found womb pits. So that was a ritual that Swan Priestesses would do. And they would actually do a hole in the earth and put all sorts of offerings in the hole, and then covering it with earth again. And it was believed that it will help them with their fertility and to manifest whatever they desired. It was really a ritual to call in whatever they wanted. And there has been a lot of pits that have been discovered, and they had swan feathers. So the swan was really revered as that sacred bird that would bring fertility, that would bring light, that would bring hope. And they were really seen as this beautiful, gracious bird. But that was also very strong and courageous. It's also quite interesting to know that swans are the biggest birds to fly. They are the biggest animal that you're going to find in the sky, flying. Interesting, right? And essentially, they are seen as a bridge between humanity and divinity. When you think about it, women are also bridges between humanity and divinity, because we birth children. There's a soul that is coming on earth through you. You are a bridge. You are a vessel. And so there's a very strong connection between swans and that divine feminine essence that you have inside of you. Now, if you go and have a look at different traditions, different spiritual systems, you'll see that actually a lot of goddesses are represented with the swan. You have the goddess Bridget, which is the Irish goddess of love, fertility, beauty, creativity. And she's very often represented with the white swan. She has those wings as well. And it is also believed that Britain, the United Kingdom, actually received its name from that goddess, Bridget. Breed, she's also known as Brittany. She birthed the UK, the United Kingdom, potentially. And then if you go and have a look at ancient Greece, you have a very famous feminine goddess. Can you guess which one I'm going to be talking about? Goddess Aphrodite, of course. She's the goddess of love, the goddess of fertility, the goddess of creativity and beauty. And she's often depicted as riding a swan. She's on top of a swan, sitting on the back of a swan, and the swan is spreading its wings and flying. Interesting, right? That we see the swan in the Celtic tradition, in the Greek tradition, but it doesn't stop there. If you go even further east, all the way to India, you have the wife of Brahma, or the sister of Rama. I know they have a strong connection, but I'm not sure which one it is. You have this beautiful goddess Saraswati, which is the goddess of music, art, knowledge, and wisdom, creativity. And it is believed that with Brahma, they birthed the earth and humans and all of creation. And Saraswati is riding a swan as well. And she also carries with her very often a lotus. And the lotus is really the symbol of the cycles, death and rebirth, and being able to create something really beautiful that is coming out of the mud. Because lotus flowers really often come out of really muddy and dirty places. And then the lotus might make you think of another goddess from another tradition, which is a goddess that I really cherish and have a very strong connection with, goddess Isis. And Isis from ancient Egypt, which is also a goddess of love, wisdom, magic, creativity, fertility, and all of that. She's the queen of heaven. She's a bridge as well between heaven and earth. She's always represented with a lotus in one flower, the blue lotus, and the ankh. And either she's represented with those two symbols, or she's represented with her wings wide open. Guess what these wings are? You've guessed it. They're swan wings. The swan is present everywhere in every tradition. But why did all those spiritual systems connect with the swan? Where could that be coming from? What could be the dots that connects all those spiritual systems and traditions? Well, let's stay in Egypt where we were with Isis, and let's connect with Newt. So the goddess Newt was the grandmother of Isis. And Newt is known as the goddess of the sky. And she is actually the goddess of the sky because there's a very strong connection between her and the Milky Way. When Newt is represented on drawings, on paintings, or on walls, she's always in that arching position, like the Milky Way. Basically, the Milky Way represents her. And then we can also wonder, where does that name Milky Way comes from? It's interesting that there's this reference to the milk. Again, the milk that women create, the sacred milk. There are so many symbols in all the names that we use, all the words that we use every single day, but we're not aware of it. And so Newt is the Milky Way, basically. And when you have a look at the Milky Way, and you go and have a look kind of at the middle, but more to the left, you see the constellation of Cygnus, the constellation of the swan. And if the Milky Way is the goddess Newt, the swan would be her womb. So the swan constellation, the Cygnus constellation, is a galactic womb, a celestial womb. It is known as the celestial vulva of the Milky Way. It's a portal, a gateway, just like our wombs are portals and allow souls to come through. So that's where the connection comes from. The position of where the Cygnus constellation is placed on the earth, and how it is really believed in a lot of different spiritual systems that the Cygnus constellation is a womb, a portal, a gateway. And they believed in it so much that they even placed their sacred sites in alignment with the Cygnus constellation. There are some theories saying that the pyramids of Giza are aligned with the Orion constellation. Well, there have been new studies that came through and that said, well, there's a little bit of a miscalculation with Orion. The pyramids of Giza are actually aligned with Cygnus, with the constellation of the swan. Go and look it up for yourself. You can Google it. If you write down pyramids of Giza and the Cygnus constellation, you'll see. all the studies around it. It's really fascinating. And it's not only in Egypt. When you go to Avebury, which is a stone circle, it's also aligned with the Cygnus constellation. So they knew, they had that wisdom, they had that connection, they understood the power of this swan symbol and how the swan really represented the celestial womb. And the snake and the dragons are the earthly womb, the material womb. Fascinating, right? I think it's fascinating. It took me some time to really dive into that mystery and bring all of this together. And then suddenly it made so much sense. And so when you look back to the Middle Ages and even before that, you had what we called Swan Priestesses. Basically, they were priestesses of the divine feminine. They were womb priestesses, but they called themselves the Swan Priestesses because they felt very connected to the swan, and they would bury swan feathers in the ground when they created those womb pits. And Swan Priestesses were wisdom keepers of sensuality, love, soul work, feminine embodiment, creativity, and healing. But they were also known as the ladies of the lake or water priestesses. So I have to stop here for a second, because every time you look back to her story, not history, but the story of the feminine, you see that the ladies of the lake and the water priestesses are actually, these words are not chosen by coincidence. It's because of two reasons, actually. Because the water element really represents our emotions. And when you embody your feminine energy, you honor your emotions and you deeply understand that your emotions are guides to your soul, guides to healing your ego. And you don't try to suppress them. You really sit and honor them. We have kind of forgotten that in our society, and it is work to actually learn to honor your emotions and allow yourself to cry and allow yourself to express your anger, your sacred rage. And if you're frustrated, just feel the frustration. I feel that especially, in spiritual communities, we're all like, I need to be happy. I need to be love and light and da-da-da-da. Let's connect with each other. Let's love each other unconditionally. And there's a little bit of a spiritual bypassing where we bypass our emotions because we think that they're not sacred. It's not true. Your anger, your guilt, your shame, your pain, your sadness, your grief, all of it is sacred. And all of it is there to teach you more about who you are. And the more you dive into these emotions, the more you can connect with your essence, with who you are at your core. And your emotions are showing you where you need healing, where and how you can go of layers and conditionings and beliefs that don't serve you so that you can come back to your essence and embody your essence. And so, of course, the priestesses understood that. And so they were called the water priestesses and the ladies of the lake for the reference to the water because of that, because of the connection between water and emotions. But that's not it. There's more. When you are born and you are in a beautiful womb, you are in an amniotic sac, you're in fluid. And that water that is in your womb, or that you were in before you were born and you came here, that water actually has the same properties as the ocean. It's salty water. The water of the ocean has the same properties as the amniotic fluid. We come from the water. We come from the salty waters. And so the ladies of the lake, also known as the ladies of the sea and the water priestesses, they're womb priestesses. That's what it means. And when you think about womb priestesses, it's not just about understanding the mysteries around birth, but your womb is a portal to source. It's a gateway. So It's about birthing your soul, birthing yourself, and embodying your feminine energy. And of course, Isis was also known as the Lady of the Sea. Bridget was also called the Lady of the Sea. So there are so many connections between all those traditions that are just saying the same thing, but with different names, different ways, because it's a different time and a different culture. But we find these symbols in every tradition. So you might be resonating with everything that I'm saying, and it might be hitting home for you. So I have a few questions here for you to see if you are a Swan Priestess. If you have that Swan Priestess frequency inside of you, and what that would actually mean for your work and for your life. So the first question that I have for you is, first of all, have you been resonating with everything that I've been sharing? Do you feel a connection to swans in general? Maybe you love the Swan Lake, the beautiful ballet from Tchaikovsky. To be honest, I love ballet. I did a lot of ballet when I was a kid. And so, of course, I love that ballet. We actually watched it one day with my son, and he was fascinated. It was really fun. Do you feel a deep connection to feminine essence? Are you someone that's generous, that's courageous, that has healing gifts? Have you experienced a difficult childhood where you might have experienced some bullying, some rejection? You felt a little bit like the ugly duckling in your family or in your surrounding. Have you had abusive relationships that might have taught you about boundaries and about keeping your energy, your light, your gifts to yourself, and making sure that you're not going to give them to someone that is going to abuse of them and not respect them? Are you a very loyal person? Once you have friends, they stay your friends. Even if you evolve and you grow and you take different paths, there's still a huge respect and love for each other, and you stay friends. Because swans mate for life, they're very loyal to each other. If you have said yes to any of those questions, and if you've said yes to all of them, I have the pleasure to tell you that you are a Swan Priestess. You have that swan frequency inside of you. You are a lady of the lake. You are a water priestess. You might also have a connection with Isis. And so what that means for your life is that you're here to embody the divine feminine and to do that work first personally, so that you can embody that frequency and transcend all those challenges and all the trauma that you went through, and then activate that divine feminine essence in others. You're here to help unveil the mysteries around the feminine, around the womb, so that we can again celebrate these things and not feel that they are shameful and that we should hide them. I also want to share with you the myth, the story of the ugly duckling, because there is a lot of wisdom here in this story that can also help you see what your role is, what your purpose is, who you came here to be as a Swan Priestess. So the story of the ugly duckling, first of all, we have to think about this title, the ugly duckling. So the title came, or has been given, or is a perspective that comes from the ducks, the family of the ducks. When the little ugly duckling was born, because he looked gray, like swans look when they're born, and he looked different from the other ducks that were all yellow, they thought he was ugly. And so they rejected him, they bullied him, they even chased him away. He left because he was so bullied. So he left his family, he left his friends, left his country, left his home, and was on his own for some time, just thinking, I'm not good enough, I don't fit in, there's something wrong with me because I don't behave like everybody else. Until the little ugly duckling sees those beautiful white birds flying in the sky. And then the ugly duckling wants to say hi to the birds and is bending its head in the lake. And then suddenly, whoop, the ugly duckling sees its reflection in the lake and sees that it's also it's become a beautiful white bird, like the swan. It's a swan. So the ugly duckling, again, it's a bullying perspective, because the truth is that you are a very powerful and unique swan. But now what does that mean for your life? Because maybe you have felt like the ugly duckling in your life and in your family or with your groups of friends. Maybe you've suffered from rejection because you were different. Maybe you've also felt like you didn't fit in and thought that there was something wrong with you. Well, the truth is that you are really invited to reclaim your uniqueness, reclaim your magic. And you chose to actually be born in a family that was really different from you, so that you could see your difference. Because if you're born in a family where everybody is like you, you don't see your difference, your uniqueness. And so there it was pretty much put in front of your face. And even though you might have been rejected for that difference, your difference is your power. Your difference is not there by a coincidence. And so this experience that you've had being born in a family that is different than you was there to make you see how amazing and how different you are, and learn to love yourself with that difference. And also this frequency of the swan is, of course, a frequency of I honor my emotion. I'm intuitive. I'm hypersensitive. It's the frequency of the empath that feels everything, that understands everybody's needs, that is putting everyone in front of themselves. But at some point, that starts sacrificing themselves because of that. And so the invitation is for you to stop doing that, set boundaries, and honor really who you are. Because the more you honor who you are, the more you step into your purpose, into who you came here to be. And your sensitivity, your empathy, your hypersensitivity is inviting the people around you to also go and have a look at, how am I feeling? Because when you're talking with someone and you're saying, oh, this is making me feel like this and this and this, maybe that person wouldn't have thought of checking in with their emotions, but because you're going a bit lower within yourself, instead of just talking from mind to mind, you're suddenly dropping in the heart and expressing how you're feeling. You're basically showing them the way and inviting them to also drop within and check in with themselves. How am I feeling? How am I experiencing this? You're inviting them to develop their own sensitivity and connection with self. So ugly little ducklings, who are actually amazing, powerful swans, are here to lead a new way of living. Because those people, you potentially, that recognize yourself as a swan, that recognize yourself as an ugly duckling, you're a hypersensitive person, an empath, for sure. And you're there to use your empathy as a gift and build a new way, because your values are really values of truth, honesty, depth, and love. And by embodying those values and honoring really who you are, you lead by example, and you invite those around you to rise with you, to rise to those levels. But there is something that is important to understand, is that for you to be able to really step into that magic, you have to surround yourself with people who are like you. You have to surround yourself with like-minded women, with your tribe. Because in the story of the Ugly Duckling, the only way that the little duck remembers that it's a swan, it's because it sees other swans. And then it sees its reflection in the lake. And it's like, oh, wow, I am actually like those amazing, beautiful white birds that I saw flying in the sky. And I didn't realize before I saw them. And so if you are a swan and you've gone through all of the traumas that come with swans, find your tribe, heal your trauma, explore your spirituality, step into your unique spiritual leadership. And that doesn't mean that you need to open a mystery school like me. You can step into your unique spiritual leadership simply by honoring who you are, simply by using your gifts of empathy and hypersensitivity. Because it has a huge ripple effect on the people around you. And the only true leadership today happens through embodiment. So find your tribe, connect with people who are like you, surround yourself with like-minded people, because they are going to see you really for who you are. And they are going to mirror back to you your magic. And that is going to help you spread your wings. Spread your beautiful swan wings and step into your purpose. There is so much magic and so much wisdom in the swan frequency and the connection that it has for hypersensitive and empathic people, heart-centered people. And so doing the work of healing those traumas, connecting with that swan frequency and stepping into that spiritual leadership is exactly the work that we're going to do at the initiation of the Sacred Roots Modern Mystery School. The initiation is a 9 to 10 months program for every woman, maybe you, that wants to unveil more of those feminine mysteries, that wants to understand who she really came here to be. Now wants to do the work, that feels ready to do the introspective work of healing the past so that you can step into a very bright, aligned, and joyful future. So if all of this has been resonating with you, you can find the details with the link in my bio. You can find the link in the show notes of this episode. And I'm going to be doing a masterclass beginning of September. So stay tuned, follow me on Instagram if you want to have more details. And after the masterclass, I'm going to open the doors to everyone who wants to join the mystery school and the 9 months initiation. Thank you so much for having invited me in your private space, for having created the space to listen to this episode, for having followed your intuition that led you to this episode. And thank you to yourself. If this episode has been resonating with you and you want to really integrate that wisdom, that knowledge into your life, my question would be for you, how can you spread your wings? How can you spread your beautiful swan wings? And if you don't know how, if you're afraid, find people who will see you and will help you see yourself for the beautiful, amazing, talented being that you are. Thank you so much, and I will be seeing you very soon.